Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Liz Christofferson. I'm the founder and CEO of Empower Consulting Group. We provide strategy and talent development services for luxury and lifestyle clients worldwide. And locally, I provide strategic support to Mission Community Services Corps, the Women's Business Center. Excited to be the facilitator or the teacher of the Explore Design Launch program. And I want to share a little bit of good news. We have just graduated, just last week, a number of participants from that program. And so what's really exciting about it is that they're actually taking steps forward with their business despite what's going on in the bigger world. Some of them have completed business plans. They're working on websites. They're getting their business licenses, creating bank accounts. And they're actually finding and making sales to clients. So that's a really hopeful sign for me and hopefully for everyone else on this conversation today about the possibility of weathering this storm, being fearless and confident and working together to create a vibrant business community. And I'm really excited because we have a special guest today who's going to help us be thinking and doing the things we need to do to move forward with that. So as your sponsor, host, and moderator for today's session, I just want to go over a few things so you know how to participate. We do have a good size audience, so out of respect for time and each other, please limit your distractions and mute your phone or mic. The session is being recorded, and you'll be provided access to the recording at a later time. We're going to take questions as we go through the presentation. You can type them into the chat box or the question box, and I will get those to Michael as we go through the presentation today. We're also going to ask you to complete a very short one-question survey. Just check the box before we end the session today. And before we get started, though, I know Chuck has a few words. So, Chuck, why don't you join the conversation?
Okay, thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. My name is Chuck Jaley. I'm the director for Mission Community Services in the Women's Business Center. And we do serve men and women, even though we're the Women's Business Center. About 30% of our clients are men. And in fact, that's how I came to know the Women's Business Center about 10 years ago. I was just starting my own consulting business, and I wound up taking they called it a Vision to Venture class back then, a 14-week class. Boy, that was rigorous, but by the end of it, we had a big, thick business plan and got me on my way to consulting. And here I am years later, being a director for the center and helping a lot of people. And it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but we'd love to get back. And in fact, I want to say that back then when I took that class, we were privileged to have the speaker we have today being our graduation speaker, Michael Gunther. So thank you, Michael, for that back then.
You bet.
And I found Michael has always been on the cutting edge of things. And, if there's someone that can think ahead and think of different options and opportunities, he's doing that. So we'll get started in just a moment. But I wanted to remind everyone to make sure they take advantage of the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. If you're self-employed, you're entitled to the PUA, and it's up to $600 plus another $167 a week on top of that. And the portal reopened on April 28th. You access it through californiaedd.ca.gov. And if you have questions on that, please reach out to us. We can help. And it's not straightforward, so if you're confused, we can help you with that, or you'll just do your best to figure it out. But please take advantage of that as a self-employed person. And at this point, I'll turn it over back to Liz and to Michael for the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chuck. So as Chuck said, with us today is Michael Gunther. He is the founder and senior consultant, business development for Collaboration Business Consulting. Michael is a born entrepreneur with a knack for identifying issues that prevent organizations from growing. He builds solid teams. I love that. Teams are so important in the execution of strategy and the growth of a business. So Michael has some really great experience that he's offering us. He has guided over 500 businesses to achieve growth. He's trained thousands of leaders and help to create sustainable organizations. He asks his clients tough questions to help them determine their roadblocks, and he supports and encourages local entrepreneurship. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to hear your presentation and for you to help us forge a path forward. So I'm going to hand it off to you, and I'll be here in the background to help you out.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. And Chuck, thank you also for letting me participate today. And more importantly, thank you all for taking time out of your day to try to figure out what is this new normal that we're going to have to operate in, and how do we actually create a path forward. You know, none of us have experienced times like this economically, and it's going to require us to be different type of entrepreneurs and different type of leaders than we've been used to playing. And so today, my goal is to give you maybe some insights, some strategies that you could begin working on, hopefully answer some questions that you might have. And then at the end, we're going to be providing a workbook that Liz and Chuck will get out to all the participants. That'll be your first stage in maybe trying to put some time and ideas down on paper to start creating and forging a path forward. So, who is Collaboration? You know, we're just a small boutique consulting firm, and we're really about helping to lead and scale organizations. We've been fortunate here on the Central Coast. We've helped start over 300 local businesses, and as well as I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of folks here. You know, one thing that we're about, and this right now during this pandemic, is our mission. And our mission is truly to inspire, educate, and empower proactive leaders to achieve breakthrough performance. And today, breakthrough performance probably looks different than it did for us before. You know, breakthrough performance might be just getting through the PPP program or the EIDL loan program. As the dust settles on some of those things, it's trying to determine, the breakthrough might be trying to determine our new normal, which I'm going to talk a little bit about as things change. The one thing I do want to talk about is the business planning framework. You know, in crisis like we're in right now, it requires different stages for people to go through, and you may go back and forth between these stages, especially right now in the pandemic economic reality we're living in. You know, we're entering our 8th week here in California on the shelter in place, and we're already seeing 18% unemployment. State's going to have close to a $60 billion deficit this coming year, not counting all the other business and economic challenges coming our way. And so part of what I think this time frame is going to be about is stabilizing our businesses so that we can start getting to recovery, and then that we can thrive. Now, there's going to be some organizations that I have some clients that are busy right now and they're thriving right now because they're essential businesses, but they're still having to figure out how to make sure they can stabilize that growth and move forward. So I'm going to talk about this framework, but I'm going to really focus on phase one, which is stabilization of your businesses. You know, and you know, when you think about this, I don't know about you, but I think there's kind of a reality check we have to be doing right now. I had 2 client calls this morning, and the anxiety these business owners are feeling right now, as again the dust has settled for the first couple weeks of this situation. They're beginning to see various cracks going on, possibly in their businesses, their client base, and they're also beginning to see some potential economic challenges that are coming our way. And so I think there's this thing that people need to do, and it's the what if reality check. Internally, you know, what if you continue not to be open for business for the next 90 days? You know, I had one individual talk about maybe putting their business in hibernation right now to move forward. What are some of the external what ifs? What if unemployment gets up to the 25–30% range and stays there for a while? You know, it's expected that we are going to have a rough recovery. It is not going to be a quick recovery. And it's going to be a road that is going to force us as leaders to constantly be challenging ourselves and to realign our businesses on an ongoing basis. So I think the first thing people need to do is what I call what if. You know, what are all the worst things that could happen within the business, internally and externally? Get those fears, anxieties out of your mind, put your fear down on paper, because then you can start addressing those things. This is not a time to have your head in the sand, and this is not a time, I think a lot of people are hopeful, like the governor's supposed to announce the beginning of an opening of the state. It's going to be a very slow process. The economic challenges are still going to be present. The revenue challenges for many small businesses are still going to be present. So it's good to have hope, but we also need to be a little pessimistic. And some of those that know me, I always talk about this being optimistically pessimistic, because most entrepreneurs are pretty optimistic. And so right now, I think it is about doing a reality check. What's internally could happen and externally can happen. By doing that, we can start addressing the things we need to look at. So for instance, I have some clients that have lost their client base, that their business was to go into people's homes and do some work with their kids on different learning disabilities. Well, they're not even allowed in people's homes right now. So the what if is internally, how can we operate? Do we need to think of a new way of doing this? Externally, are there going to be regulations change, or is it going to get tighter with trying to have safety and sanitation issues related to the virus? They reopen as well. So I would encourage you, again, do a reality check. Maybe a little painful, may have a little anxiety with it, but to me, it's about really allowing us to move forward as leaders and understanding what we're dealing with. Because we don't know what we're dealing with, how can we try to solve it? The next component is really looking at your business in 3 areas. You know, we've been scaling and working with small businesses for the last 25 plus years. And when you look at it, there are things organizations need to be constantly looking at. One is we call intentional infrastructure. What are all the systems, the financial planning, the organizational systems, the communication tools? What are the things that are the infrastructures to support your service and delivery? Right now, if you're looking at your business, you need to be looking at intentional infrastructure. Like, we can't, even our business, we can't meet our clients face to face. We're having to rethink how we even get business in, because we usually do a lot of networking events and go to trade shows, but now we can't do those. So our intentional infrastructure is trying to rethink how we deliver our product and service. The other aspect that you need to be looking at is your methodical growth. When you think of methodical growth is really sales, marketing. What are the systems and the strategies to grow your business? And I have a CEO virtual group. They meet on an every other week basis in the Bay Area that I lead. And you know, some of them are feeling like they're back at being a startup after even 20 years in business. They're having to rethink their finances. They have to rethink how they price. They have to rethink about how they propose to those people. And so I encourage you also at this time looking at not only intentional infrastructure that we need to change, but then the growth aspects as well. The last thing about scalable growth is leadership, and that's really being a collaborative leader. And what do you need to be doing as a leader to start creating a new vision and creating this new normal? And right now, I would encourage you that don't try to look a year, 2 years out right now. It is too dynamic economic situation for us. I would suggest doing this looking 60, 90 days out as a leader and thinking about how do I need to be establishing the vision and direction for my organization, be able to lead myself and my team to start making some changes and surviving this. And this year is going to be about survival and recovery for many, many organizations. I even have some folks that are leaders of businesses that are essential, and they're concerned, they're busy right now, but their concern is come 3rd or 4th quarter that their pipeline doesn't look like it's going to be refilling. And so leadership in this scenario also requires us as leaders and our attitudes. It's hard not to be anxious. I can't even tell you how many of our clients and past clients we have reached out to, and the anxiety of their business right now, because they're trying to take care of their customers, they're having to rethink how they deliver their product or service, they're trying to work on the financials of their business, they're trying to take care of their employees who are now all working from home, and then at the same time they have a life issue. their own family and their own safety concerns. And they're expected to be leading direction too. So can you imagine all the pressure on business leaders right now? And it's an anxious time. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, when you look at the scalable growth model in the stabilization stage of crisis management, some things you should be doing right now as a leader in moving forward. So as I go through this, feel free to, if you have any questions or questions you want to ask or et cetera, feel free to go in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll work through those. But at this stabilization phase, I call it the stabilization assessment. And I think if you did your what if, get all the what ifs out of what's possible, what could happen internally or externally, okay, so we get all that out of our mind. And then if we look at the scalable growth model, intentional infrastructure, methodical growth, and collaborative leadership, we then come back and say, okay, let's look at methodical growth. What is still working for us? So maybe there's some things that are still working. You know, we still have clients buying this way. Hey, we're still opening up new markets. Hey, there's still new opportunity. But what has changed or not worked? And what has changed in that methodical growth area for you? And what's not working? And is that change permanent or temporary? So for instance, when I think of restaurants right now, things that aren't working for them is like can't have people in the restaurant, but they're doing a lot of takeout. That's probably not permanent, maybe permanent for a period of time, but they're gonna have to then go to the next stage of this temporary way of reopening. And then the next stage, it's probably gonna take 12 to 18 months before we go to restaurants or bars or retail stores like we used to. And so what has changed, and is it permanent or temporary? Because your strategies may change on that. And then in thinking of methodical growth, what is the new normal right now? So when I say the new normal right now, and sometimes I call this the abnormal times we're living in versus a new normal. But the new normal right now, again, is for the next 30 to 60 days. And I think you have to be agile and constantly moving forward. So when you think about methodical growth, think of things like reaching out to clients that you haven't talked to in a year or 2 years. How are they doing? Just go in and check in. Maybe there's some new issues or things they need. I have an organization we're working with. They started doing that, and all of a sudden their clients were asking them, they needed to get new partitions set up for all their office workers coming back to work. And my clients now are helping them with that. And this is some of them done business with for 12 months, but they just happen to reach out to check in. So under methodical growth right now, start reaching out to folks. Determine with your products and services, do you need to rethink? Are there some innovative services you need to be offering? You're seeing this already. The wineries here on the Central Coast, I know, are doing tastings to go. Some are delivering wine to, wine club members. They all get it on the same day, and they're doing a whole tasting menu on Zoom. So methodical growth. I know what's still working, what is changed or not working, and what's your new normal right now look like. I see a question here too. Person says, what ideas do you have? I feel like I have to restart my business. So that's similar to what I'm hearing a lot. I would suggest that all of you really begin redefining who your ideal client profile is again. And again, most businesses have 2 to 3 ideal client profiles. And I would revisit who they are, what they look like, what are their new buying decisions? Are they going to buy less? Are people are going to expect price concessions? That's a big thing I'm hearing a lot. The last recession, if you think about restaurants that weren't doing happy hours, stores may have sales, but after the recession, happy hours were happening. Retail was constantly adding sales. I know I hardly will buy anything, even today, without it being on sale. I know eventually it's going to go on sale. And so I think pricing is something you may need to think about. And so under methodical growth, I think you have some important things to say. What's still working? What has changed or not working in your new normal? I think under intentional infrastructures, one of the biggest areas that I think people are going to need to really constantly monitor. Most of you are probably feeling this already with cash flow, especially many of you that have seen your cash flow go away because you're not able to even perform your service or provide your products to folks. But I recommend doing a worst case scenario that you update on an ongoing basis. What if we only got a third of our business back? How can we survive? If we have cash reserve right now, how long can that last? Can that last into the end of the year? If you have a certain amount of cash reserve, how long can you stretch that out? I think a lot of folks are expecting a big V-shaped recovery, and it is not going to be a V-shaped recovery. They thought that initially, but they originally thought it was going to be a U recovery, but now they're saying it's going to be a bathtub recovery, which is a very long U. And they think it's going to be at least 2.5, 3 years before we even get to the unemployment numbers we once saw. And so I encourage you on the finance side under intentional infrastructures to truly know your numbers. Don't be afraid of the financial decisions, but there are some numbers you're going to need to really get a hold on. I'm not sure how many more packages of financing resources for small businesses are going to come our way. The government has already added so much debt. They're expecting maybe one more stimulus package, possibly, but I would not count on that as because those are stopgap measures. And again, this may have forced you to rethink, what's still working financially for us and what's not. On the HR side and operations side under intentional infrastructure as well, this might be a time, to really rethink staffing and resources, outsourcing work. I know many of you may have clients or your employees working from home and you're working from home. Do you need a large office space moving forward? Are people going to want to continue to meet virtually, especially until a vaccine is in place? And so you think of HR and operations, what's still working, but what has changed? And are these going to be some permanent changes that we're going to need to work through? And then what is that new normal for HR and operations that you want to work towards? So, as I look through this, and I think of you as leaders and entrepreneurs, I think it's a time for us, again, to reimagine our businesses, reinvent. It's going to be a lot of work for us. It's going to be challenging for us. It's going to force us to be different in how we approach our clients and how we build our companies. But there's opportunity. Every downturn, there's opportunity to grow and to build. But it's going to force us as leaders to really do an assessment as where are we as a business, truly, where are we with our clients, where are we operationally, and what are the things that we should be changing to operate. Again, this is not going to be a light switch recovery. It's not going to be all of a sudden we're all open and everything's going to go back to normal. And so it's going to require leadership and a different type of leadership. I do have a question here that what do we need to prepare for employees or customers come back to our offices? That's still, there's a lot of guidelines coming out right now from many levels, the county, the state, the associations, et cetera. So part of your stabilization plan may be looking at, can you acquire the PPP, personal protection equipment, gloves, sanitation, masks for folks to move forward. In addition, you may, if schools aren't open or summer camps aren't open or childcare isn't open, and if you have employees, you may have to think about how am I going to adapt my business so people are going to have to be home with their kids and going to have to still be able to work at home. And so flexibility of schedule and output is going to be really critical in your stabilization planning with that. Customers is going to be an interesting thing. There's a lot of things right now, this is so new to us. People are concerned about risk mitigation and liabilities because when customers come to your place of business, you have to make sure you're following and your employees are following strict sanitation guidelines. Otherwise, you could potentially be at risk if someone feels like they came in and to your place of business and say, hey, that's where I was impacted with the coronavirus. So there's going to be a lot of changes. The open office spaces that we once knew are going to be changing. I think it's the stabilization phase. I think it's important for you to determine what that's going to look like for you on those guidelines. I have another question here. How do I handle employees who won't or can't come back to work? So I will take the can't come back to work as I know I've had a couple clients where this has been an issue because their employee has to take care of their kids who don't have daycare or school, and their spouse is working full time in essential business. So part of it is legally, if you ask people to come back to work and they don't, and they choose not to for whatever reason, that is being considered as a potential voluntary resignation. You have to put that in writing that are you not going to come back. Some people aren't coming back to work because they're making more money on unemployment right now than they are working. And so they're basically will be considered, if they don't go back to work, to voluntarily resign their position, which means they could lose their unemployment. And so I think that's
Michael.
Yes.
We actually have a question. There's a question about mediating or mitigating potential lawsuits from the coronavirus. So I would imagine the example that you shared, if someone comes to your business to do business, whatever it is, and they feel like that's the place where they caught the virus and decides to sue you, is there anything that you can offer in the way of suggestions or thoughts that people should have, paths they should pursue?
Yeah, that's a great question, Liz. Yeah, there's a couple things you should do. You need to make sure you have really clear guidelines for your employees on what it looks like to come back to office and what the sanitation protocols are going to be in the office, first of all. And so you be able to have something that they sign off every day. And the reason we say every day is because, as we all know, we all get back to our routine and forget that we have to be all, concerned about safety and just all those things, because we all start working together. So the first thing is to make sure you have clear guidelines. And if you want, I know our team did one for our office. I'd be happy to share that with you, Liz, that you can share with others. And we just grabbed some of those things from the CDC and some other places of what the protocols are going to be for our employees. So first thing about mitigation is making sure that your employees are following the guidelines. The second piece is the customers. And this one's going to be a little trickier because I think you have to be able to say we're following the guidelines presented by the CDC or the county health department for how to open. So we're following what we've been told to do. With customers, you have to be able to figure out a way to and let them know of your guidelines. So if you've been sick or had a fever, you may not be able to come into our place of business. And I was on a group of a bunch of wineries, and a lot of them are doing new systems of reservations for tastings because they can't have people just drop in. And on that reservation with tastings, they're going to have guidelines that they have to follow when they're at the winery, that they have to initial off that they're going to follow the guidelines. So that if they break those guidelines, they were aware of them and knew of them. And so I think there are going to be some things you're going to have to do to protect yourself. The biggest thing is that if you or your employees are not following the guidelines of safety and sanitation, that's going to be the first place of the defense. So you have an employee who is sick or an employee whose family member is sick and you have them come back to work, you may have to ask them to quarantine themselves. So that might be one of the questions every day. Has anyone in your family been sick or has a high fever? The CDC's temperature of a fever is 104 is the actual number that they use. But that might be a question you have to ask. We had one of our clients, an employee came in and said his wife has coronavirus. They've all had connected with this employee. He's an operations manager, and all 14 employees had to go home for 14 days. And they're an essential business supporting them. So I think if you take the right precautions, you can prevent yourself from the litigation as much as we can. And again, the litigation is going to be new, and nothing's been held in court yet. But there are families already suing some major corporations like Walmart and McDonald's for employees that they feel got infected at work. Liz, are there any other questions on that? So, no, there, I can't see the Q line yet. So
I just want to remind everyone about background noise. So if you could make sure that you guys are all on mute, that would be really, really great. I apologize. I was on mute when I was trying to say that. So Michael, please continue.
Okay, thank you, Liz. So, you know, the last thing is, the bottom line is, I always go back to us as entrepreneurs and leaders. You know, we're a hopeful bunch, right? We're optimistic, we're dreamers, we're hard workers. We believe we can create something from nothing. And I think it's a time for us to be strong critical thinkers. And, you know, strong critical thinking requires us to operate differently. It requires us, you know, not to get too emotional over all the news and alerts we get, but to decipher what is it that I need to come out of that. Critical thinking is about us really evaluating on an ongoing basis what's really happening, black and white, getting other people to give you feedback on your thoughts and strategies, and not just staying in this isolated silo and trying to solve things. And I think critical thinking also is really about making sure that you're solving the problem at hand. So the problem at hand may not be trying to get the profitability by the end of the year. The problem at hand may be, how do we start getting new clients right now? And then let's get those clients in, and then let's get more clients in, and then let's get to profitability. And so I think at this time of leadership, it is just requiring us to be a different type of thinking. We got to be hopeful, but we need to bring in critical thinking skills. In the workbook that Liz is going to share with you, there's a way you can rate yourself on being a critical thinker. And it's going to allow you to say maybe some areas you need to focus on. Because at the end of the day, your business is going to make it or not based on how you are leading the business or not. And it's a lot of pressure on you, but you're the leader and the owner of the business. So that's what it's going to require, what you're doing to assess, to stabilize, to understand what's going on around you, and to really have a different way of thinking as well.
So Michael, we have another question. There seems to be webinar overload right now. What they're meaning is, you know, there's so many webinars available to us, right? I realized for myself personally the other day, I could literally be on a webinar from the time I started my workday until, you know, I fall asleep at night. So how do you suggest we get the information we need without having paralysis analysis? Analysis paralysis, I guess.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, yes. Thank you. That's a great question. I think we've become a webinar Zoom society, right? So I believe, yeah, some of you probably have heard this concept about working on your business, right? You're working on your business time. And I'm a big proponent of it. There are studies shown that if business owners take even 2 hours a week uninterrupted, that means no email, no phone calls. If you were with your best client, you would not take interruption. So if you took your 2 hours a week and really sat down and said, what are my biggest presenting issues right now? So, you know, what are the things I need to solve right now this next week? Your list may be 50 things long, but just pick what are the most 2 to 3 critical things. Based on those 2 to 3 critical things, what information might you need to move things forward? And from that, determine, is there a webinar that could best support you in that endeavor? Or is there some other information that can support you in that endeavor? I think what is that there's many folks right now trying to find out, there's so many things to deal with, right? There was the PPP and the EIDL loans, and then there's all the employee issues, and do we bring everyone back to work? And then is the government reopening? And then how do we reopen? And there's all these stressors on top of trying to grow a business, but we can't deal with them all. And I think the business owners are trying to get information. I would encourage you, again, identify the top 2 to 3 issues you need to deal with first,
But I guess not.
and then move forward on those other items.
Okay.
Without that, I think you just get too much information. I also would recommend the 48-hour challenge. The 48-hour challenge is to try maybe on a weekend, no social media, no news feeds, no news alerts, none of that. Our brains need a break right now. And the 48-hour challenge will allow you also maybe get some clearer thought on what to focus. Sorry, I think I just got unmuted, but or muted, unmuted.
It was me. I'm sorry, Michael. I muted you for a moment because we continue to have problems with people unmuting during your presentation, so there's background noise. So please continue, because I went ahead and muted everyone again, and hopefully that will work and everyone will understand that they need to stay on mute as you continue your conversation with us.
Great, thank you, Liz. So do your working on your business time, folks, but make it really purposeful. Spend 2 hours uninterrupted. Do all the what if scenarios. Go through the 3 questions of what's our strengths right now, what is still working, what's not working, and what do we need to change or rethink. And then define what your new normal is for your methodical growth in your sales, for your infrastructure, for you as a leader. From that, identify just 2 to 3 things that you're going to work on the next week, and then find the resources to do that. The good thing about all the webinars, folks, that are out there, all of them are being recorded. All of them are going to be access to other folks over time. So whether you want to go back and revisit something, or you'll have access to it afterwards, because again, it's so much information. But find what's most relevant to you right now, for this next week. And again, you're trying to right now look at the next 30 to 60 days as your new normal. So what are the things you need to focus on next week and move those things forward?
So we do have a couple of questions. One has to do with gift cards. Do you have any thoughts on gift cards related to, business strategy? It seems like a great way to continue to support businesses. And what's our recourse, though, if the business goes under and we have a gift card?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For most businesses, they probably have some loyal clients, right? That's why they're in business. And those clients that are still working want to help support those businesses. So I think people buying gift cards is a short-term gap. In essence, what's happening is the business is taking on debt, in theory. So if you sold $1,000 in gift cards, you have that money now, but you're expected to deliver a product or service once you reopen, and which is going to have some costs associated with it. I think there is a risk with the gift cards on the other end, from the consumer standpoint, because the number of restaurants or retail stores that are expected to close and not come back continues to grow. I've heard all kinds of numbers, but the last one I heard was somewhere in the low 30%. And so about a third. And so if you're going to buy gift cards, I would encourage you to do it to help those in our community. And you might want to think of it as a donation right now. And if you're a business owner offering gift cards, just make sure you're prepared to handle when people come to bring those, that you may have costs associated with that. So in your budgets, I might just add some added costs to some of your cost of goods, say if you're a restaurant, knowing that your first couple of months may be tighter financially because a lot of people are redeeming their cards.
So where do you see restaurants in the next 6 months?
Oh, my poor restaurant friends, just let you know, I'm one of those folks, my spouse and I, that would go out about at least 5 times a week. And so now we learn how to cook a lot. So, you know, the
Happy
rest,
wife, happy life.
yeah, you know, and so, you know, the restaurants, it's going to be interesting. Um, the ones that are doing takeout, they're generating some revenue. I think they're trying to stay alive right now, right? And it's going to be a very slow opening too. There, you know, it's going to be the mitigation, the risk mitigation, when they can have to have maybe 25% of the seating in their restaurants. All, you know, everyone has to be at least 6 feet away. So imagine you have to go by tables, go to the restroom, or all those things. There's going to be so many guidelines. I think it's going to be a rough recovery for restaurants. I think there'll be some that will definitely survive, and there you see a lot of creative things people are doing already with that, from giving, you know, dinner packages, tying in with wineries, doing a wine and dinner date, and come pick up together. And I think those folks are trying to pay their rent or mortgage. And I have a lot of restaurant owners that I know are actually now working in the restaurant like they never have before. I have a woman up in the Bay Area that has, they have 6 locations, and she's out delivering toilet paper and things, because I never thought I'd be doing this after 20 years of my business. But they're trying to make it work. And so I think restaurants are going to have to get creative. And they did something creative where they did neighborhood pickup. So it might be someone here locally might say, hey, we're going to have Friday night, we're going to deliver to you know, one of the neighborhoods in town, the Arbors. And so order, and at 6 o'clock, come by, we'll have our van there, come and get your food. And so, you know, there's some creative things that they can do to still get people working or buying from them. I think opening full blown is going to be a slower ride for them, bars, anything with large groups. You know, and this virus is, you know, they anticipate it coming back. Obviously, it hasn't gone away, but they anticipate it to grow again in the fall. So I think that's where you have to rethink and reinvent what our restaurant experience is even going to look like.
That's great stuff. Brooks Burgers here in Pismo is actually doing the neighborhood concept that where you're talking about, where we can order, and on a certain day at a certain time, they bring the orders here. A couple of clients that I'm working with in New York that are fine dining restaurant experiences are exploring, when they're ready to reopen, how they could bring that fine dining experience to your home. So there's lots of possibilities out there. So please go ahead and continue. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Now, I see another question here about how do I keep my employees engaged at this time? And this is interesting, especially if you had long-term employees and say you're a business that's not essential, that they may not be working, or if you have employees right now that are working and they may be working from home, and how do you keep them engaged? I think this is a really interesting question, because remember all the stress you may be feeling about the business, the economy, your own family, having to shelter at home. They're also dealing with that. Many of them also may have children at home, or parents are taking care of. And so I think the best thing you can do to keep employees engaged is, and we think of crisis, when in crisis, is making sure you have constant communication, letting people be able to vent how they're feeling, what's not working, what is working, have some different expectations of workload, because they have a workload at home now and through work. Also, doing little things. I had a local client here, Hathaway. They gave every of their employees a $50 gift card to the restaurant of their choice. So not only were they helping their employees, but they're helping local businesses. I think some are doing noon Zoom, and they do a noon lunchtime hour, and anyone can pop in and check in. I have another client. They have 137 employees. The 2 leaders are calling 10 employees a day, just checking in. So about every 13 working days, they've hit every employee, just to see how things are going, what are they seeing. Because they see everything going on economically too, and employees are probably also concerned about their job security. And so as leaders, I would be very transparent where you are and what you're doing to mitigate any financial challenges. But I'd be very transparent that we're working off a 30, 60-day game plan right now, and it may change, but I will keep you informed because that's the reality of the situation we're in right now. So just be open and transparent and communicate would be how I would respond to that question.
Great. And there's a question about whether or not you have efficiency tips or tools that you can share for working from home.
Yes, that's so interesting. I'm experiencing that myself. I'm in my dining room right now. So, I think working from home, what I would recommend is I have 3 spaces in my home now. I do different things. I do my Zoom meetings in my dining room. I do my calls on my front porch. And then in my office where it's darker, and I do all my heavy work, like I take my laptop or my computer in there. And so I encourage you also to take some breaks. The one thing I have enjoyed about working at home, I'll take my dog Sally for a walk at noon. And she usually gets one in the morning and an evening, but she's now getting a midday walk. And it gives me a chance to rethink and take a break as well. I would also encourage, be cautious of Zoom meetings and WebEx meetings. I don't know about you, but I have kind of Zoomitis. And I think some of the meetings and calls can be done by phone and not on Zoom. And the difference of the energy it takes to do a Zoom meeting sometimes if you're back-to-back meetings versus a regular phone call it can shift, and sometimes the phone calls end up being quicker as well. So just evaluate how you're communicating out, taking breaks. The one thing I would say, the first couple weeks, I was wearing ball caps and not shaving, and all that kind of stuff. But every morning get up, my routine, shower, shave, put shoes on. I get dressed like I'm going to work. And that actually has shifted my mindset. Then when I'm done with work, I change to more casual clothes, and it allows me to also kind of put an end to it. Because it's hard, as many of you may know, working from home, I end up working more on the weekends too, because things are there. So I'm trying to do my 48-hour challenge and not doing anything on the weekends. So.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Continue.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it's assessing yourself, your team, and stabilizing your attitude moving forward. And so I encourage you, take the time, work on your business. If you have questions, you have so many resources here in this community, like Chuck and Liz. We're always open to helping folks as well through coaching, consulting, one-on-one sessions to help people get through it. We have a new CEO, business owner virtual program we're doing. We're already doing one in the Bay Area. Wells Fargo's funding for us up there, where we're meeting folks during this time every other week to help them get a plan to move things forward in their businesses. And so find the resources out there. Don't be alone too. Meet with other business owners because they're going through the same thing. That's the weird thing about this situation we're all in. Usually it's one event, right? The stock market crashes, or there's an earthquake, or there's 9/11. And so you're recovering from that event. This event is like a tsunami that the water is still coming in. We don't know when it's going to recede, and if it recedes, is it another wave going to be coming? And so it's creating a different level of anxiety, and that's why the stabilization phase, this first phase of recovery, to me is so critical because we need a strong foundation. You might have to make some tougher decisions on employees or other expenses that you're waiting to put off, but you got to make sure you're stabilized to make it through the year or the next 12 months. So I encourage you just to assess yourself and your team, make sure they're focused on the right things, your attitude's focused on the right things. Don't get overwhelmed. Use your working on your business time and keep your attitude in check. And try the 48-hour challenge. Turn off all the news alerts and everything else. Don't look at the coronavirus numbers going up and all those things that we've all been doing over the last month or so. But focus on reimagining your business and just start by reimagining the next 30 to 60 days. And then in 30 days, reimagine the next 30 to 60 days, because that's what I think it's going to take, some smaller steps in moving. And if there's no other questions, Liz, I thought maybe we can wrap up. And I know Liz is going to be sending out our workbook to go along with this stabilization talk today. We have webinars on recovery and then thriving coming up in the next couple of Wednesdays as well. You can get contact information on our website on those. We also have a free resource center for businesses up there that have webinars, white papers on all kinds of issues, from engaging your team to building a sales channel, to all those things that you might be needing right now as you focus on those 2 to 3 things a week moving forward. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to connect you to any resources that we may know that can also help you during this time.
So I actually do have a question. Why is it so important for business owners and entrepreneurs to reach out and connect with other experts in their marketplace or in their industry or in their community?
You know, Liz, it is, it's one of the most critical things. It's a lesson that took me a while to learn, quite honestly, myself. And I belong to my own CEO roundtable that I go to. Part of it is, I think business owners sometimes feel like we have to have all the answers. Our employees look to us for the answers. Our customers look to us for the answers. The reality is, the more vulnerable you are and realize you don't have all the answers, and build resources around you, and build people who have a specialty or experience. I have a brother-in-law, he owns a dental practice. After 30 years right now, he's struggling because they were shut down. But he has always said when he got out of dental school, he knew he could have struggled over the next 10 years to figure some things out by bringing in different experts or talking to other dentists. His first couple of years, he learned things that helped accelerate his growth as a leader and as a business. And also talking to other business owners, to me, is of such value, because you realize you're not in it alone. There's all your own insecurities and anxieties that you have about your business, your leadership. You find other people have the same things. And Liz, it's kind of funny to me because I'm collaboration business consulting. We help all these businesses over the years grow, but I'm no different. I'm an entrepreneur with all those same stresses and questioning things. And I have to reach out to folks to get that I can talk to be able to get feedback as well. And it's what makes great leaders. Think about the best athletes out there. They have coaches. They have coach. Michael Phelps had a coach just on his backstroke. He had a coach just on his kicking. And so think about it. You find folks that can give you the feedback and resource you need to make you stronger. And I think that's an important element of being a strong leader, is building your team of experts around you, whether it's other business owners, whether it's services like from Mission Community Center, et cetera.
Excellent, great. So Michael, thank you so much. You have shared so much really good information today. And, just to recap, we're talking to Michael Gunther at Collaboration Consulting, and he shared with us how to stabilize, recover, and thrive. He shared with us ideas around the infrastructure and the growth and the leadership of our business, what's required to get us from where we're at right now at this moment in time, and what we need to be thinking about in the future. He shared with us some critical thinking skills and tips and ideas to actually begin to create that plan, and just that reminder that we're a community, and the more we can connect with each other and talk to each other, the better things will be. So I want to encourage you. I just emailed, or I guess typed into the chat box, information about Michael's next webinar, which will be on a Wednesday. And before you all leave, I have a quick survey that I would like to have you take. Yes, there is a workbook. I got a question here about the workbook. So there is a workbook. We will get it, and we will get it out to you probably via an email, I would imagine. I need to change back to being the presenter really quick so we can do this poll before we go. I don't want to show my screen. Let's see. Sorry, guys, I talk as I do things. So let's.
It's a new normal, right? Trying to figure out how to work on all this.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you should see a poll on the screen. If before you exit the session today, you could just take a moment to give us a little bit of insight and feedback. That will help us as we continue to create these programs for you in the community. That's really what Mission Community Services and the Women's Business Center is all about. It's all about finding those leaders, those way showers, if you will, who can help businesses get from just an idea to creating a good foundation to growing and thriving. And together, we'll get through whatever the future has in store for us. And together, you know, we'll have an amazing place that we can share with other people. So, Michael, thank you again for joining us today. I truly appreciate all of your help and your insight. And I encourage everyone to participate in the Wednesday program that's coming up. And we'll talk to all of you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Okay.